Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a little bit of a look at Steelix V. And I'm on a bit of a Steelix high at the moment. I'm playing through Pokemon Heart Gold, and one of the Pokemon that has been on my team the whole time is, well, first Onix, then Steelix. I dragged out a second 3DS and my old copy of Platinum so that I could trade my Onix to turn it into a Steelix. I am loving Steelix right now. Am I loving Steelix V, though? I should mention a huge shout out to the lovely Antoine Boulet here for providing our translation. Now, it is a metal Pokemon. Could be fighting, could be metal. It is metal. We're kind of alright with that. I'd rather it was fighting, if I'm honest with you. Looking at the basics, first thing that should jump out, 250 HP. Yowza. That should be the highest HP we've seen on a Pokemon V so far. Unfortunately, we have seen Wailord. Wailord does actually have this beat, but make no mistake about it, this is gigantic. Except this has a retreat cost of 4, so you can use buff padding to give yourself an extra 50 HP. What's that, you say, Wassy? Wailord also has a retreat cost of 4? You need to try harder? Okay then, it's a metal Pokemon, which means you can use metal goggles to reduce damage done to you and stop damage counters being dropped. You can use metal core barrier to reduce damage done to you by 70, though remember it will fall off at the end of your turn. You can use Lucario and Melmetal to reduce damage done to all your metal Pokemon, including Steelix, by 30 for the rest of the game. Oh, that's starting to look better. And of course, while we're talking about it being a metal Pokemon, don't forget that we have Metal Saucer, which will allow you to attach metal energy from your discard pile to Steelix, meaning you can even get the energy rolling more quickly. Though weakness-wise, the general rule is anything you would be hitting for weakness has already been scared off by Zacian V. You do incidentally have a resistance to grass, which will be good if grass ever gets good, and a weakness to fire, which honestly, with all of those welded X running around right now, we're not loving. It's a pretty bad weakness. But what does it do? Well, 1 metal, 1 colorless energy, 30 damage, plus 10 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. It's an Outrage attack, but it is called Raging Hammer, which is definitely a better name than Outrage. Here's the thing, though. I just spent a bunch of time telling you how difficult it is to take down Steelix. The HP is gigantic. You can use either buff padding or metal goggles. We still have metal frying pan, but by the time this comes out, we're not going to, so I'm kind of ignoring that. Do remember that weakness guard energy will keep your weakness away, so that is something to bear in mind if fire decks remain big. So that's kind of awesome. And then you've got stuff like Lucario and Melmetal. If you use their GX attack, you could legitimately be sitting here looking at a Pokemon which just is not being KO'd. And if this, or at least it's not being one-hit KO'd. And if it's not being one-hit KO'd, then essentially you get to just sit there and kind of laugh a little bit because you're just not going down, and then you're hitting for more damage depending on how much damage is on you. If your opponent hits you for 100 but doesn't get a KO, then next turn you're hitting 130. And now you're putting your opponent in a very awkward situation, because they need to start doing some awkward calculations as to exactly how much damage they want to do. Something like a Zacian, however, just doesn't have a choice. Zacian V only hits for 230 damage, or 230 minus however much is on you. So that means that they are going to be leaving you with a lot of damage on, and then you're probably going to get a nice easy KO on Zacian. And this is going to lead to some funky mind games, because you're going to attach or not attach metal goggles, and use or not use Lucario and Melmetal, depending on how much damage your opponent can do with a Pokemon they've got on the field. You want to sometimes try and take an extra little bit of damage so that you can go and get a key KO that you would otherwise miss, and your opponent is going to want to either one-hit KO or try and manipulate a two-hit KO, but so that they're not allowing you to Raging Hammer in the meantime to get a KO. I like these Outrage-style attacks, but the usefulness of them really does vary from deck to deck. Make no mistake about it, what we see here is a Pokemon that has so much HP and so many options for trying to reduce damage that you are really going to be able to make the most of any kind of outrage attack you have here. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm kind of loving this. But having said that, it is just an outrage attack. It is purely reactive. So you need something to do if your opponent isn't hitting you or isn't hitting you for the right numbers. Might I introduce you to the second attack? Iron Tackle. 5 energy, that is quite a lot, we'll get there in a minute. 210 damage, and you do 30 to yourself. Okay. Again, I'm kind of alright with this. I mean, 210 damage isn't quite as high as we might like. We'll talk about this more in a moment. But in terms of the 30 damage to you, hopefully it's not going to make much difference. You're not taking that much from your opponent, and you got giant HP, and you never know, this 30 damage could be what puts you into KO range. Of course, you are doing the 30 damage, then it becomes your opponent's turn and they get a hit. So let's just say it could backfire. Now, the one thing we do need to mention here, both Metal Goggles and Lucario and Melmetal specifically state that they reduce damage done by your opponent's attacks, so it will not prevent this self-damage here. We did used to have Protection Cube a little while ago, which would stop self-damage, but unfortunately, no, doesn't work anymore. It's not the end of the world, but it is something that's very much worth pointing out. Now, in terms of the energy cost here, on the one hand, it is awkward, but on the other hand, we do have ways around it. I mean, firstly, we've got Metal Saucer. Now, remember, as a basic Pokemon, there's no triple acceleration energy. As a Pokemon V, there's no twin energy. But you could use Welder, or, to be honest, any energy acceleration whatsoever. Don't forget that in Rebel Clash, we got that Duraludon that for 1 colourless energy did 30 damage and attached a metal from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. So you could sit behind Duraludon for a couple of turns while they accelerated a little bit of energy to you. That would absolutely be an option. But between that, the ability to use stuff like Welder, having Metal Saucer, sure, I'd like it if we still had Solgaleo Prism Star. That was something I love to use to accelerate metal energy. Let you attach 1 metal energy from your discard to your Pokemon in any way you like, for each Pokemon your opponent had on the field. So they have 6 Pokemon on the field, you get to attach 6 energy from the discard pile. But the fact of the matter is, that's gone away, so, you know, get over it. As for the attack, I mean, look, 5 energy is super expensive, but 210 is pretty good. You will be getting basically any single prize Pokemon. You will be getting pretty much any relevant GX, and you will be getting a lot of Pokemon Vs. But there will be a bunch of stuff like Zacian where you're just 10 damage short. And sure, you can use Vitality Band to bridge that gap, but bearing in mind, I've told you multiple times about other tools we want to use, like Metal Goggles, etc., could be awkward. Now, having said that, Dragapult V is really good, and that does have 210 HP, so yay, 1-hit KO. But then again, we can look at stuff like Eternatus, which is looking really good, and has 220 HP, so you will need that extra 10. Honestly, it's going to be down to matchups. If you really need to do that extra 10 to get some key KOs in matchups you're expecting to play against, you're going to need to play something like Vitality Band, or maybe something like a Galarian Zigzagoon. Though honestly, I think you're probably not going to go for that one. The point is, what we've got here is a very bulky, very difficult to KO Pokemon that has an outrage attack, and that in and of itself is kind of dumb good, and has a nice big attack for when outrage isn't working. It is in a lot of ways very similar to Reshiram and Charizard. Reshiram and Charizard has 20 more HP but gives up an extra prize and doesn't have all of the beefy tools. Honestly, this is harder to KO than Reshiram and Charizard. You've got basically the same first attack, and the second attack you do 20 less. And honestly, that is genuinely relevant, because there are so many 220 and 230 HP Pokemon V that is kind of a thing. but it's basically a metal version of Reshiram and Charizard that's harder to KO. I'm giving it 4 Wassies. I think just how big it is alone is going to make this something people want to play around with. That does feel like it might be a bit too high, but I've said it now, I'm sticking by it, gosh darn it. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.